Welcome back to Ferocious Education. This is Ed. Today I'm going to be talking about two different stocks that are very close to one another yet miles apart. So first one here is Mullen and the second one here is NIO. Now NIO is a completely different company than Mullen, but the similarity is that they are in the same field of space somewhat. So Mullen itself is coming in as a company that is making EVs, and here's a little bit about them. They've been around for a while. So Automotive, which was basically what was incorporated before Mullen, was founded in 2009. And then you got the Mullen GT, which was basically founded in 2002. And basically, Mullen itself is a combination of these two, where basically Coda was dissolved into Mullen, and you got Mullen itself. And you have a little bit of a timeline here that kind of explains it itself. So back in 2014, acquisition of Coda Automotive, and then acquisition of Mullen Motors Cars, and then Mullen Technologies Incorporation was founded back in 2014. And so there is a bunch of different information, and they have different vehicles as well. So they have things, for instance, like an EV fleet vans for last mile deliveries, and these ones are already incorporated into our world. They have had deliveries of these, or at least even concepts of some. And then he had one of the biggest vehicles that a lot of people are interested in, which is the Mullen 5. Which is in itself supposed to be a kind of a built in the US vehicle. And we did take a look before into their current facilities and their plans onto the Mullen 5, but there is most likely going to be more news about it at some point later on in Q3. Now, we're going to go as well to see the latest news for Mullen, but a quick just overview of NIO. So NIO itself is not American, it's actually based in China, and they position themselves as a leading in EV market as well, and they founded back in 2014. So in terms of the timeline for Mullen itself and NIO, it's very similar, but you got to remember that Mullen had history with the two different companies we just talked about. Now, NIO itself is trying to be as well the China's Tesla, but China's Tesla is Tesla because they do have a massive presence in China. Now, they also have different things such as battery as a service, as well as proprietary autonomous driving technologies and autonomous driving as a service. So they also have different vehicles, including the ES8 and the ES6, and a bunch of them as well, and a flagship premium smart electric sedan that was launched back, the ET7, and in January 2021, they began delivery on that vehicle, and began deliveries in March 2022, so that's already gone. And NIO launched ET5, which is a mid-size premium smart electrical sedan in December 2021. So NIO does have more options, but let's go back quickly and take a look into Mullen's news, and then we're going to kind of compare as we move forward between Mullen and NIO. So Mullen itself is to be added to the Russell 2000 and 3000 index. It's kind of a nice thing to see, but generally it's not massive changes in the long run. It's still going to be added into index. There's going to be more money flown into it, but not as massively interlinked to the market's index as someone would think. It's still independent. Now, Mullen Automotive as well has been getting a lot of media attention, especially from Bazinga, and you also have them announcing different things like polymer battery test results, which seem to be positive, but the market really didn't react as much onto it. So the results shows that Mullen Automotive solid-state polymer battery cell testing exceeded previously stated values of 300 AH or ampere hours at 3.7 volts. They also showed impressive results as basically they have been in line with what was seen from the EV grid, and the data supports solid-state polymer battery cell technologies, which when scaled to the vehicle pack level and 150 kilowatt hour equivalent can deliver over 600 miles of range on a full charge of Mullen 5 EV crossover. Now, that was good as well, and you did have different results, but I'm going to skip through that, including new hires and whatnot. And you have NIO's as well news. So NIO does something nice that they are actually providing deliveries almost month per month, and they're also debuting in Singapore as the first auto company listed on 3 exchanges. And NIO also provides continuously updates relating towards either productions, to how many vehicles they have produced, different milestones and whatnot. But you can easily look into those, so I'm not going to really focus onto it. Now, the difference between Mullen and NIO as well, one of the other big differences, NIO has a lot of different vehicles that you can choose from, and they also deliver these vehicles. Mullen, on the other hand, didn't have any vehicles that are actually delivered in more of to a consumer scale, such as NIO, and are yet to find out how their performance is. So that is one of the bigger differences, and that will show as well on the balance sheets. So for instance, when you look into Mullens, you have around 12.72% short interest as a percentage of float, which is still a bit higher. NIO itself has 4.79, which means basically that Mullen has almost around 3 times as much people, 2 to 3 times as much people, betting on it to fail than for NIO. Granted, it's only around like 12.7, and that price would, or that percentage might be lower than actually what it is, but it still shows you a little bit of the sentiment in the market. The financial strength, for instance, quick ratio is 1.94. When you look into NIO, it's 1.93. So they are very much on par to one another, and the current ratio is 1.94, 2.02. Debt to equity, it's 0.45, 2.55, and debt to assets, 0.21 and 0.21. So you get to see that they are valued almost on the exact same scale when you're looking into the financial strength. Now in terms, or at least have the same financial strength between one another. And in terms of valuation itself, this is 6.67 for Mullen. And you got to remember, Mullen does not sell at this point or deliver the vehicles. So their price over book itself doesn't include as well price over sales because that's empty. But price over book itself, the assets will start rolling in once they start having deliveries. For the time being, it's a tad a bit more overpriced than NIO, and a big part is that NIO actually delivers vehicles. So that's a very, very important. I keep repeating it. In terms of Mullen's gross margins, it's 11.14 based on last year, and I'm not sure exactly how accurate that is, but for NIO, it's 17.64. In terms of return on assets, it looks horrible because they don't have any deliveries, and the price stock, of course, massively tanked. In terms of NIO, it's negative 7.21 because they've been relevant for quite a bit. Now, what does this actually come in and tell you? Well, Mullen is on the same power of NIO in terms of financial strength, yet the valuations lack because they don't have any deliveries. So if you were to take a look into Mullen going into the steps of NIO, NIO itself has a market cap of around $29 billion. Meanwhile, Mullen has $398 million. So you get to see, or $399 roughly million dollars. So you get to see that if Mullen was to take the same steps that NIO did, and by the way, NIO was really a fraction of the price back in 2019. So in 3 or 4 years, Mullen can easily reach out to the same levels as NIO, or at least that is my own opinion. And in that case, if NIO does reach to that level, you're going to be having multiples of what you're seeing right now, from 399 to roughly around 29 billion. That is a massive change. You get to see here, even in 2020, early 2020, they were trading around 1.69 and whatnot. I believe it was going up to almost $2, which is where Mullen is. And they were actually around $14, $15 when they started, and they had a massive jump, and they started going around $10 and dipped significantly. And you get to see that that is very similar when you compare to Mullen's chart itself. So hopefully we do get to see results similar to NIO, and of course I'm all for EVs, so I'm looking for both companies to actually succeed, and there is a lot of space and a lot of market share for those both. Now let's move on towards technical analysis for Mullen and NIO. Now from a technical analysis, Mullen itself looks like it might be heading towards a negative reversal based on the MACD, or an attempt to a negative reversal. Hopefully that gets rejected, as it has done before. For instance, back on 27th of May, it got rejected. So there's still a lot of chance. In terms of the willing percent R, which is very similar to the RSI index, it shows that it's very close to being in a sense of oversold rather than overbought, meaning there's more sellers than buyers, more supply than there is demand. And if that was to balance, you could expect the price point to increase a little bit higher. In terms of momentum, it's still positive momentum, and that's a good thing. Now, when you take a look into NIO itself, of course, the price points and everything might be very much different, but you get to see almost the exact same thing when it looks towards that RSI or MACD. It's going to, or at least attempting to go towards that negative reversal, and that's a bit of a dangerous thing, but it's more of a market thing rather than a stock thing is what I'm trying to say. It's not something against Mullen, for instance. And when you take, or NIO by the way, but when you take a look into the willing percent R, it's kind of balanced for NIO rather than there is more supply than there is demand. And that makes sense as well for the price action in the last few days compared to its counterpart Mullen. Now, Mullen itself shows that there is a chance for it to continuously go downwards and to see new lows based on the stochastic fast and stochastic slow. And that itself is also seen for the NIO, but the NIO seems to be a more aggressive drop if it was to happen than it is for Mullen. And in terms of Mullen's moving average bands, you can expect this one to trade between 127 and 104, with the Bollinger Bands between 145 and 86. So the first one was the moving average bands. For NIO, it is 2052 and 1351 for the Bollinger Bands, and the moving average bands for 1872 to 1532. When you take a look into different supports and resistances, there is a strong support for Mullen at the 109 level. Below there at 90 cents, and below there at 73, and then 52. Resistances, there are a few, like a 130, and then 156, going a bit higher to around 197, 237, 280, and around 327. When you take a look into NIO has a good amount of supports. For instance, the 1821 is actually now a resistance, but was a support. Below there, it's a 1742, 1653, going a little bit lower to 1563, which I just said, and 1447 and 1352, going to 1167. Resistances, 1885, 1974, a strong one seems to be closer to 2117, and then 2243, and then to 2417. Comes to the question to Ed, what do you think is going to happen between these two? Well, my all honest opinion about these two is that they seem to be more in different timelines. They are not as comparable when you think about trying to get a company with its counterpart, but it's more looking at NIO in a better position and looking at Mullen. Both of them, in my own opinion, are at a discount at this time being. Now, relative that the entire market has kind of slid downwards when you look into the EV, at least upcomers, NIO itself has been where Mullen was previously and seen a massive rocketing in price. So Mullen could easily follow the footsteps of NIO and be multiple times. I mean, from 119 to around 18, it's still massive, but it was around 67 at some point, and I'm not expecting Mullen to hit those or to reach those records. But to at least be, let's say, up to above $12 or $10, Mullen, within a longer term, if they successfully execute their plans, it is a very much a possibility. Now, NIO itself, I still think it's on discount, and they do have a lot of different projects coming up that are actually exciting, and they are connected to 3 different indexes, or 3 different stock markets. What do you think about this ticker? Make sure to put down in the comments below. Share, subscribe, and like, and have a wonderful day.